behave on the first reading. Okay. So you're good here, Marge. Life is good. Yes, she should be coming on. You should be the full group. There's Marge. Hello, Marge. Great to have you on. I'm gonna do, I want us to remember, team, that while we will be highly engaged with each other, when we are talking, could you talk towards our guests on the screen? Because that helps them hear us better. Okay, and Lad, you can't even hear us?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, good. So we're gonna keep trying to keep our talking coming your way. All right. Lad and Marge, if you could go on mute until it's your turn to talk, then we will keep the back noises down. Sandy, I'm doing a sound check. Can you hear us? I just want to make sure you can hear it. And Ernie, he's good. And I know Marge can because she put herself on mute. So that's good news. We are going to, I want to make sure everyone in person does begin eating. But I want to make sure that your noise as you open your container does not drive everyone on the screen crazy. So could you please open up your containers now so that we do not. And I know all of those that are remote are as jealous as can be. Oh yeah, Sandy's got her lunch. She's ready to go. So remember, someday we might eat again in person. You just never know. So those on the screen, please indulge and stay either hydrated or nourished because we are going to do that too. So open the chips, get those bags open so we minimize our noise. All right, we're now going to turn it over to Mr. Gunderson for our opening prayer. Remember, you're talking this way, sir.
All right. Looking away from Deborah is what she's really telling me. So, continuing my tradition of trying to find a theme for these opening devotion prayers. With school starting, I went on the internet and looked at prayers for education. And I was surprised to find that there is, since 2008, in Australia, a group that is organized under the name mission, quote unquote, the spheres of influence, to establish prayer groups across Australia and then beyond on different spheres of influence. And one of those spheres is education. And so they've used the following verse from Deuteronomy. Fix these words of mine in your hearts and minds. Tie them as a symbol on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Teach them to children, talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. And so they've developed a whole background dissertation on this, but in the interest of our work, I'm not going to go into that. At this time, I can give you the link if that's helpful. Rather, I'm going to take part of their prayer, and then I'm going to add to that a paragraph for our own work here today. So let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your love and presence at this church and this community. Thank you for your providing our community teachers, administrators, homeschool instructors, office staff, coaches, bus drivers, counselors, psychologists, social workers, caseworkers, school staff and volunteers, community partners, and school board members. We thank you, Lord, for safety and protection for every person in our schools and our universities. Thank you for blessing our community with your peace. We humbly come before your throne of grace, asking you to bless everyone and everything. This task force is engaged in finding ways to educate and equip every one of our members, visitors, and all those in some way touched by this church. Educate us on the needs of our people. Equip us with the knowledge, vision, passion, and commitment to provide through education the tools needed to enable so many more people to engage fully in our church and its programs. Be with us on this journey. Inspire us in our work and our presentation to the council and the church of recommendations that can enhance both our ministry and the full participation of all touched by it. Amen.
Amen. And once again, if you could just thank you.
We learned.
Just want to make sure that I can be sharing for posterity. So, as we get started today, I think I shared a little bit about appreciation for everyone on this task force. And I just want to let you know, someone asked me that I forget where I was. And I was saying I was working on this task force and they said, oh yeah, but do you have good people on it? And the answer is I have phenomenal people that I'm working with. And then it's because each one of you has either leaned in, taken on responsibility, moved when we're not in session, we have things move forward. So I am happy to sing your praises with anyone who goes, what kind of people are on that task force? I like to say incredible. So in that, Popsicle Sunday was we just found out more than 50 popsicles were handed out. You know, if you can just get 50, that's a different thing, but it matters not. Remember, our part of our agenda of having Popsicle Sunday and what school opportunity is to let people know we care about their opinions. If they choose not to give their opinions, we will act like they all gave us opinions because we open the door to be open for input. So with that, what's cool stays out there. We are not taking it down. If people have ideas, we can always say use that QR code. But now it is time to go to next phase, which is our tech savvy survey to find out where people have their comfort level. So what you had attached to this email that came to you is actually it was the PDF of what will be used in the electronic link. And then someday on September 10th, we can have paper. But our goal right now, remember, our big goal is to encourage everyone to electronically fill it out so that we don't have to do data entry. So Sandy, as we are ready to roll, would you like to give any backdrop on where you and Maggie are with the survey? And then we can let people chat. What would you like to do?
Well, Maggie's phone number is written on my grocery slip and she's ready, waiting for me to text her to say, put it up on Connections and print it for Sunday.
Okay, and so Marge, once this will be embedded in your communications also as we go forward. But let's take a moment. Everybody's had a chance to see it. And this is where Sandy is saying what's your input, what are your concerns with the survey? So who would like to have offer anything on the survey? Ernie.
I love the questionnaire.
I
don't have any comments on, the way it's put together, but I haven't seen the online fillable version. Has that gone out some? Because the only thing that was attached was
Maggie,
PDF.
no, Maggie she did all the changes to the one that she is going to print. If she has our approval today, she's got to go back to the online fillable version and correct all of that to hit the button.
All right, then you'll go through and do the final checkout on that to make sure that's all clean?
Correct.
It could
Great.
be.
Correct.
Okay.
And so will the Whitlingers. They're my secondary checkers in person.
All right, Bernie, in the world of Deborah has hearing issues, I can't hear you quite as sharply as it would be helpful. So could you just figure out either how to get closer to your microphone or turn something up, okay? So, but the good news is Sandy heard you and she seems happy with whatever it is you told her.
You can hear Sandy better than you can hear me?
I can hear you
Now you're
much
better.
better now. Now I can hear you much better, and Lad's nodding also. So whatever improvement you did, we are all appreciative, okay?
Great.
All right. Other comments that people have on the survey? Jane?
I had my mouth full, sorry. Is there a way that after somebody does the survey online that they don't do it again? I mean, I'm getting old and forgetful, and if I do it this week, 2 weeks from now, I'll think, didn't I do it? No. It would be nice to know that you've done it. Completed.
We have that kind of control.
Okay, I don't know if there's a way.
Now, if they put their name on both times, then Mike would be able to see that and
Yeah,
get it
I
out.
think you
But
give them extra work.
So in the world of when you complete a survey, it is possible, I believe, to send to the person who did the survey, thank you very much for your input. So I think we could ask the Google Meisters to put a button on acknowledging you have submitted. So at least people don't worry about, did mine go through or not? Do they have my input? So Sandy, if you could ask for that little enhancement, that would give peace of mind to the submitters.
Okay.
And it doesn't necessarily track them, but you have confidence that, hey, I sent mine in. Okay. Fred?
And I think at the table, when we're handing them out, you can tell them this,
Louder.
at the table, when we're handing them out, we can tell them if they take one, this could either be your guideline that you know what will be on the internet, here's the scan it. And you don't have to then submit this. However, it's something to prepare yourself for the internet. And if you don't and can't use the internet, please bring it back and drop it in the box. So we'll just have work that at the table.
So in the world of, yes, it's a beautiful script, okay, and plan. In that world, are we able to have a poster with the tech survey QR code on for those who might not be quite as adept?
We have it already.
You already got it, you're good,
Yeah,
Okay.
we have the table, the box.
okay, all right, okay. Any other suggestions, comments on the tech survey rollout? So in the world of, Deborah likes to be a little accurate, I kind of get scoop up every now and then. Are we going to have our post-service or pre-service every Sunday between now and September 10th, where we'll have presence in the Narthans?
We're gonna be on for
That,
one Sunday.
yes, that was the plan. We need coverage for one Sunday. And
Sunday after this one.
yeah. We'll be there this Sunday. We need coverage for the
Something.
27th.
27th, we need coverage for?
We'll be on.
All right, so is anyone able to do the Narthex stand encouragement table on August 27th? You are not, okay,
am not,
Chris,
Sarah, so-
might you be available for manning the, now, could you get training on where you get your stuff from?
Yeah.
Okay, so get your hand up. Okay, so Chris will do the, and Steve, can you hover a little on the 27th? I'm out of town, so I can't be helpful there.
We'd be there before church and after.
Before and
Sunday.
after church.
Yes.
Get them going in and going out.
Okay, I should be able to do.
They also then want to confirm. We'll miss the 27th, but we are planning to do it on the 3rd. And do you want us to do it on the 10th?
Absolutely, because the 10th is Steve Gunderson and Pastor Blythe's tag team, big presentation during the
The dog
remarks.
and City show?
I think what would work on the 10th is if we could almost like, they do with the offering, which is we have 3 or 4 people at the back ready when I go up there. And we will we just have people ready to hand out, just go up, rather than take money, you'll hand out the survey to anybody who raises their hand. And so we get them and then we say, during the pastor's sermon, and he'll laugh when we say that, we want you to fill this out and give it to us before you leave. And then we'll be ready at the end to try to collect them too.
All right, so in the world of Handers Outer on the 10th,
I have some pens available too.
Yeah, I'm available as well. I'm actually back in town.
Cool.
All right, so Lad will be helping on the 10th as well with.
I'll be on
And
the
Mike, Fred and Jane, okay, when Steve's doing the dances up front, okay. So I think we've got a plan for deployment. Ernie, I do want to circle back to you, the idea of encouraging committees to ask their committee members to fill out the survey. Are you good with that?
Yeah, I haven't done that yet, but I do have a spreadsheet that I think has the majority of the information we need so that we can get that out. And then I think, Marge, should I work with you on, here's the list of people we want to get them and what committee they represent, and then, do a fairly standard letter, but just modify it to say, as the chairman of blah, 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 we'd like you to reach out to your members and encourage them.
I'd be happy to help with that, Ernie.
Okay,
So-
all right, so Marge is going to be content creation. Ernie's gonna be deployment, right? And what would you, just general target for the old timetable? Ernie, when would you be thinking that we could send that out to the committees? What would you like to target?
Yeah, I can get the data pulled together in the next week. And, so I would think we want to be trying to get it out next week.
All right, so could we say that by August 28th would be, that gives you plenty of time? Is that too much time?
I think we should be shooting for sooner than that.
All right, so we're gonna say August 21. All right, how's that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, we're going for the message to committees. And that does include the quilters, right? Right, checking.
Sounds like the voice of experience talking.
We're warned that if the quilters are in, you're in good stead. If the quilters aren't in, stay out of their way. So I just want to be sure that they are being included because their voices are important, okay?
And Ernie, you thought the council was the most important in the church.
Yeah.
Got that all wrong.
What I'm really thinking about is I'm not sure that more than one of the quilters has an email address that they use. So
It's a problem. You're right.
So the
Yeah.
handouts are important.
It does.
Email address, yeah.
My go-to. So getting hold of Ruth is vital.
Right.
Spread it to the rest.
Bruce, you put Ruth on something and it's gonna happen, okay? Right, so, Ernie, if you don't have Ruth's email address, Jake apparently has the magic formula to getting to Ruth, okay?
great.
All right, so I think as everybody comfortable on the text survey, we're gonna move forward right now to our project. Everybody had a homework assignment. And everybody has their 1 to 5s. What are we gonna do with this? Let me just go up to the top. What's our goal with this? What our goal from our exercise today is to begin to have content for Steve's big memo to the church council. So we're really getting closer to content from the themes of equipment, capabilities, whatever. So we're really looking at the physical and the digital efforts here, okay? Ernie, I am going to turn it over to you to walk us through how the best way you want to assimilate our brilliance.
I love how you put that.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, he's muted.
Okay, he's muted, but he's gonna unmute as he shares his screen. So we're all looking at it together.
So I was hoping that if I only share part of the screen, that it would then let me put our pictures someplace out of the way. That doesn't seem to be working great. So do you see the spreadsheet view on the bottom of the screen?
Yeah, what we see is we've got the spreadsheet, but we have the cost 1 to 5, impact 1 to 5, not the effort 1 to 5. So,
And we're only down to sub ID 3.
Yeah, you're missing.
Right.
4 and
Yeah, I'll
5.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
that'll-
I'll scroll
that's a
through it.
scroll. So he's gonna be
Yeah.
scrolling through this,
okay.
okay?
I wanted to make it big enough that you could see it on here. So is that viewable in the conference room?
Yeah, it's quite good, quite good.
All right. So just to do the quick intro, similar to how we've been organizing it, I did it by kind of physical resource. And so in the sanctuary, there were ideas that we, have talked about, and I'm picturing that, we've got to work this over the next few weeks because we should be counting on adding more ideas to this based on what comes in from the survey and the What's Cool survey. And did we get anything What's Cool so far? Have we got things we should be adding to this?
Yes, but I did not bring that with us, so I don't want to hold us up as I go look for it, okay? So I think, yes, we will have more to add, but if you're okay, let's not talk about that today.
Yeah, so give me some hint. Is it like 3 items or 33 items?
It's less than a dozen,
Okay.
okay?
So then I just put an ID and sub ID on here so we'd have an easier way to reference these things. So we've got the sanctuary stuff, then fellowship hall. And in each case, I always included, room for adding new ideas on here. In Ogram Hall, the enhancements there, the main conference room. So far, all these are things that we've touched on before. But then I added some new categories that, we may not want to rank right now, and they may not even get ranked the same way, but things that we've really got to, make sure we keep in mind. And so I called one just AV Tech Hygiene, because that's, a term I used to use in the past where it's really not so much project oriented as just good best practices for how we ought to run things if we really want them to run well. So stuff like having a database of assets and, organize things well and label things well and document things well, all those types of items I just put in there for us to consider. A list of training opportunities. Some of these we've touched on in the past for different ways we could try and bring information out to people. Then I tried to include a section just about specifically focusing on how do we make a better experience for those who are either sight or hearing impaired. I didn't have anything to list there at this point, but I think we need to look at how do we fill that in. And then I added a section on, so what do we need to make sure we're doing so that when this closes down, that we don't just have a nice recommendation that goes and sits on the shelf someplace and, 3 years from now, somebody says, oh yeah, didn't we used to have some ideas about what we should do? None of it ever happened. Well, so this is where we think about how do we make sure that we're defining the right path forward to, advise how this should get implemented. So those are the sections that I've added. Any comments, questions, feedback on that so far?
Very thorough, Ernie. Much appreciated.
Just trying to set us up for success. So if you'd like to take a stab at going through and having some group ranking discussions, I'd be happy to be the note taker on this stuff. The first item I put up there was just to start us off with something interesting was, so how about big video screens in the sanctuary? I've been looking, there's nice space above where the choir is and above where the handbells are. And so I expect that, we could get a proposal for how to add screens up there.
Ernie, this is Steve, and actually, in the new ideas section, I had submitted some pictures from a church in Tucson, Arizona. I was there for a funeral, and I know that there's great concern by Michael and to some degree by Pastor about losing the beauty of the front of the church with screens. And I wanted to just share with you, so you can go take a look at it at some time of your convenience, that what this church in Arizona did is they had a series of small screens placed throughout the sanctuary and in ways that facilitate everybody's ability to see a screen. I mean, they had it really designed. So for example, think of where the choir stands. There would be back-to-back screens. So those of us sitting in the pews would see one screen, but the screen on the other side would be so that the people in the choir would see it. It's a series of small screens they've done. And I just encourage you to take a look at that as a way that might be able to move to screens, and while dealing with the opposition we've had from some of our professional leadership. How's that?
That's a good point. I'd also like to add to it if I could, Steve. A prior church that I was at had something very similar. And they just had two, however. They were placed about where you were originally talking, the one behind the choir and then the opposite. So both in the front, although I love the idea of one in the back for, like I said, maybe the choir, it's always a possibility. But I guess my point is they colored these. They were retractable screens with a remote control, and they colored it to match the facade of that wall. And they put like a wooden piece in front of it so that when not in use, they were hidden. They weren't used all the time, but that pastor started using them even for visuals during a sermon. Maybe during the sermon, it would just be a picture, let's say, of Jesus in a boat on the water, if it was the story of Peter or whatever it was. And they did run it and then bring it up always before church when people were gathering, before the service started, to another place just to roll the announcements. They just kind of kept rolling them through. And then I've also seen it used where they had lyrics to music, or maybe when you came in that day, there was a little bit more contemporary Christian on there. And so they got permission for, I don't know how you do that, YouTube video, let's say, and it had beautiful music as you were entering. So I do know that screening use in a church is controversial. And, some enjoy it, some don't like it. I know it feels like it takes away the getting away from all of the social media and screening and all that kind of stuff that church is a sacred space. So I think we have to be aware of both sides of that and see how we can come together if there is a need. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm probably one that has those concerns. In my travels, I've been to a lot of churches, and I've mostly seen bad examples in the use of those screens. And
Yeah.
I'm concerned it's a big distractor. You don't want everyone, especially when you're talking about placement on the sides, you don't want everyone like staring, and not focusing on, the front. It would be interesting. That's my first question. What would be the purpose of these screens? I've seen them like we've just discussed, but I don't know. That I have to say, as techie as I am, I'm kind of old school. I'm a minimalist when it comes to use of lots of screens, or we just have to be careful of how much of a distraction it is.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. I've had that experience in a congregation, and I think it's one of the most controversial things we deal with here.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, and could I weigh in on the life of evolving? All right, so I don't think it would behoove the task force to go, we're all into screens. Let's get them up everywhere we can find them. So I would like us thinking forward, because we can't, there will be two sides to the story forever. What could be an evolving use of screens to experiment, all right, and test them out for a safe purpose without invading to, we have now gone totally tech. So I think there's a way for us to position us as how will this benefit the worship experience and engaging, and where and how could we do it? That could be complementary without leaping off the cliff with we're all in on screens. Jane
This-
and then Fred.
This may be worthy, I hate to say, of another survey, but it might behoove us to figure out what is our purpose, what are our thoughts on it, and then get everyone's kind of feel on it. Not that that should drive everything, but you don't want people upset, even when you start using the first screen. Outside of the sanctuary, I can see some easy, low-hanging fruit. Like we have that screen outside, and I'm not sure that's really used to the best of its ability. But maybe that's worthy of a survey, just to get people's, because we're not the only ones who've traveled, and what are their experiences and in the use of screens at other churches.
Well, and actually to that point, in terms of the how many surveys, again, we're a task force. I think there's opportunities from the Growth and Ministry Committee about how screens can help. But also I do find it interesting, my early look at the what's cool ideas are all about screens. So there are no ideas that are coming forth except look at this idea of screens, look at this idea of screens. So what's cool is opened up the screen opportunity so we can see. But let's hear Jane, then Fred.
I think one of the first things, the low hanging fruit, are the people in the back. They don't see like the children's, there's no way they see what's going on. Maybe experiment with the back rows and see if it helps people, because people don't go back there because there aren't any seats up front. They're there because they want to be there, and I think they're missing out on some things that they don't realize they're missing out.
Fred.
Well, my question, basically, to you, lad, is it the fact that there was a screen in the sanctuary, or the way it was used? If a screen exists, it doesn't have to be used. It needs to be used very effectively and appropriately.
Yeah, it was a combination of the placement of the screens and what they were using it for. I mean, I have to say the last time I saw a screen at a church was actually in Tallahassee, and it's a very small church. But what they did do is put these two large screens up front. And at first, when I sat down, I thought, oh, geez, this ought to be interesting. But what they did is they used that during the hymns. And so that people didn't have to, use the hymnals or whatever. And I have to say, you were still looking up front. So it didn't look like you were staring over here or staring over there. So I think that's the experiment. Like, who is it going to be? Who's going to be best served using these screens? What is the purpose and the placement? To me, the whole low-hanging fruit is, when we have some of the holidays and we're spill out into the back. And so they're way back there. To me, that would be advantageous to have a couple of screens there.
So I think we can do some evolving in our recommendation of screens, but Ernie, what would be helpful to you out of this discussion, or do you have enough to get a sense on this?
Well, so I'm interested to see whether the group thinks we should have, a couple of different video screen options on here, or whether I should just make this one more generic about, figuring out what is the optimal screen layout, and then add a second item under the organizing section about how, if we're going to use screens, we're going to have somebody who's weekly job is to put together the proper content for what's going to go on the screens for that week. And, that's a whole nother piece of work. So that we don't end up with screens being poorly used.
Yeah, I
Right.
think the part of screens is the easy one. Okay, it's the how and manage and using them. Steve, we have a comment here.
I think that, the screen issue is both so complicated and probably controversial in that half like it, half don't, that it may not be a role for our committee. Because clearly those decisions cannot and should not be made without Michael and Patrick's full engagement, et cetera. One of the things I want to also suggest as an option, but it's a very expensive option, is tablets. I mean, you could give people tablets that chose to have them. So for example, if you were sitting near the back, but you wanted to see the baptism or you wanted to see the children's sermon, et cetera, you could just have a tablet and people could pick them up if they wanted to. That way you would get the benefit of the screens without the controversy of placement.
Well, and actually that's number 7. Okay, that's number 7 on our. So I think we could craft the use of electronic machines. You could also do it on your phone. I mean, anyway, so there's the screen and the screens and the iPad option that we would put forth deserves more attention, discussion, and that can be another committee's working on it. But we think that we have heard that people are interested in exploring technology use in the sanctuary. Would that be?
I'd sound like a Debbie Downer on some of this technology. I've actually been in churches where they had iPads. And one thing I noticed is that you need a tech support person.
Right.
Yeah.
You hand an iPad to somebody, and even 1 or 2 people, if they don't know how to use it, now you got someone literally doing tech support in the middle of a sermon. So you just have to kind of be aware of the logistics of that and who would actually serve that support. So
I would like us to also think about our work is for the now, but planting seeds for the future. I don't think you dive in with anything whole hog to, okay, everybody's no more bulletins after October 15th.
Right.
Right.
It's not striking me as.
We'll let
So,
you present that.
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines here. I'm thinking more longer term on this. And I agree that there's a lot of items on Ernie's list that, yeah, this needs fixed. The lights need fixed. The microphones need fixed, go. You can do those kinds of things are really the low hanging fruit. But
Yeah.
part of the reason I would prioritize some of those is more for just what we've got in number 3 here, sub ID 3, increase the live streaming value. In other words, there's a lot of people out there that are unchurched that maybe want to be, that if we were better at live streaming, which now brings up this whole issue of tech support, because if you're going to try to live stream and bring people in, I use my daughter as an example. She lives in the middle of nowhere in West Virginia, and the closest Lutheran church is, 60 miles. And 60 miles in West Virginia is a long ways. But they live stream church in Chicago because of the ability to do that. And I would like to see us work to the point where we could say, oh, gee, Dana, our service is at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, live stream it, and her be able to feel like she's a part of the service. And that means enhancements that add microphones so that you can hear the congregational responses. It probably means adding tech support so that when she can't get in, she can ask somebody, or, cameras down, what's the deal? That kind of thing. So, that's kind of where my head's at on some of the, especially the sanctuary kind of issues.
I agree as well.
let me call on the hands as they. All right, I'm gonna go to, Rich, you started to talk, so finish your sentence, then I'll go to Fred.
All right. I'm going to agree wholeheartedly. As a person who usually is always at church, but once in a while couldn't be, and did watch the live stream. I know we do need improvement. As Michael has said, there's the microphones above the choir that aren't the greatest, and you can't hear the congregation singing, and so you don't really feel like you're as big a part of the group as when you are right there. And those are the kind of things that I think we need Michael's help on as well. But those are more immediate, that we can reach others in a way where we're more up to date. That sound, that live streaming looks more up to date and everything's working well. So I'd be for that.
So the virtual experience would have the following elements of recommendation in for those who are among us and those who are far away. So the whole virtual worship experience, we would like to have a section of this would be a priority with these elements. Is that what I'm hearing? But I didn't let Fred talk, so I'm gonna let Fred talk.
Hearing Mike's example is excellent as far as remote. I was confused a little bit, Ernie, in trying to fill out the cost column. And what because I had no idea, and everything I looked at when I looked at that column, I thought of cost benefit. And consequently, without really having a handle on cost part, I didn't know how to weigh it against benefit. So consequently, as a guesstimate, I put a 1 on repair the hanging microphones and use the TV and the narthex for some announcements. Didn't seem like there was any. Well, I know there's cost to the one, but the other is just program.
Cost effective.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is helpful or not. I'm asking Ernie and Ladd in particular because of your tech backgrounds. When you look at all of these lists, and you both know the church facility very well, not just in one category, but out of the 3 pages of options here, are there certain options that you think need to go to the top, that we need to make those all number 1s as priorities? And that we can at some point work our way down from there? I mean, I don't know if that's helpful or not. I happen to personally believe that Fellowship Hall is my number 1 priority.
Need improvements.
But that's just me.
We built it. It's not there.
So, Ernie, in terms of Steve's question, do you have a thought on that? Ernie?
Well, it seems we ought to be thinking about how do we, group together what our focus areas are going to be, and we've just been talking about, improving the quality of our remote access to worship services, whether it's live or recorded. It's improving that remote worship experience is a whole group, and it sounds like, there's a lot of us who think that's important. Then we've got a section which is really about how do we improve the worship experience in person, because we certainly, I suspect, think we have fewer problems there. We're probably pretty good in person, but we should be thinking about what can we do to improve the in-person experience. Then we get to how do we improve the, remote meeting attendance, our whole Zoom capabilities, and, encouraging people to be very open about volunteering to work on committees, even if they're not around all year round, because they can get fully engaged without being in the same place all year round. And then maybe the 4th bucket is, totally new things we can get into, like with equipping Fellowship Hall, what are the new capabilities we could introduce that today we can't do? So it's, enhance the live stream, enhance the in-person worship, enhance our remote Zoom kind of capabilities, and then do some new things. Might be like 4 ways to group those things and talk about which ones we want to tackle first. Thoughts?
So I'm gonna, Steve's put his stake in the ground of fellowship hall, everybody else, it doesn't matter what it is. He wants so I'm thinking he might want, he might want to move up fellowship hall ahead of the remote meeting participation thing. So, but maybe I'm just being too granular there. So, thoughts on all the way, fellowship hall in its current state is not optimal for heavy engagement. So it seems that it's kind of a big piece of the real estate over there. So how do we make sure a big piece of the real estate is being better utilized?
Well, Michael has shared that by fate or accident, somebody walked into the church office a couple of weeks ago, and it was one of these sound and production companies that works primarily with churches, wanting to know if there's anything that they could do for St. Armand's Key. And there's just after we'd had this same discussion in either the growth committee or one of them about Fellowship Hall. And Michael said, yes, what you can do is you can give us an estimate on what this would cost to do this in Fellowship Hall. And I've had so many meetings. We were at the foundation council meeting that we're all at. There's serious discussions right now that maybe the foundation ought to look to consider creating a gift to support some level of sound system in Fellowship Hall. So there's a lot happening in this area right now. And I think the general feeling was that we need at least 2 proposals before we can even, because it's going to be a significant cost. But I think that there's a chance by sometime in early fall that the foundation board might actually have made some kind of an action in this area. And I'm looking at foundation board members when I say that, based on those.
So wait a second. So do we take credit for the idea?
Exactly.
So is this, we want credit for the good idea that the foundation is already going to work? I mean, it's weird. Okay, so that was not my intent, but laughter is good. So, but I think that it's the tech I'm being quiet as others speak.
I just have an observation,
Yes.
sorry.
Go for it, Marge.
Okay, I was just looking, we're talking about how to group this. I think that's a good idea because I feel like right now we're, trying to eat the elephant. It's like one small bite at a time. But I just took a look at the different categories that Ernie had created and looked at where I felt, how I ranked the impact. It was real obvious to me where I was putting my emphasis just by looking at that impact column.
So do share what you.
Okay, so Fellowship Hall, Steve, you're going to love this. Bubbled up right to the top. I think it was really clear to us when we did the tour that there was, they skipped a lot of things in the interest of cost to get it at least functional, but the technology part was lost because of the cost. So it seems that there's a lot of opportunities there. My second one was and this is probably more effort than cost, but the AV tech hygiene. I think that's critical. Anthony's learning as he's going along, and it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be so difficult. If everything was clearly documented, that there were manuals that said how this runs, everything is clearly labeled in that booth. That's going to make anyone who has to step in, even if it's temporarily, or if there's transition, that we're not reinventing the wheel every time. So it seemed like there was a lot of benefit to that one with fairly low cost, just a lot of effort. And then I think my third one was training. I think that's critical. I think that's where we're going to really, considering the demographics of our congregation, there's just some people that really would benefit from the training. And I always benefit from training. I think that's an important piece of it. As we were starting to think about rolling out more technology options in different ways, people have to understand how to use that. And I think once that happens, the acceptance comes. So that's a real critical piece of it as well. And then the others kind of fall down. Sanctuary is important, and I agree. I think that's low-hanging fruit. I think that's things that can probably be done along the way. I think the impact is going to be with the first three things that I had mentioned.
All right, thank you. Very, very thoughtful. Jane?
I look at Fellowship Hall as the entry for new people. You can have concerts there, you can have a movie night, you can have, people will come to something like that, that's somewhere other than in the sanctuary. At first, you think, oh my goodness, I'm signing up to be a member and I don't want to do that. But if you bring them into Fellowship Hall, give them something, meet people, they want to come back.
Excellent point. So right. Can I just
Chris?
say one more thing?
Yes, please do.
It's an excellent point. And really, that's part of our outreach. And how are we going to, first of all, serve the members we have, but maybe gain new members along the way? I like how you put your categories out there, Marge. And my three are, probably in no particular order, but I'll do the two financial ones first. Our Fellowship Hall, sanctuary, not necessarily screens or devices, but that's just me. So Fellowship Hall, sanctuary, and then Marge, the one that you said, the AV Tech hygiene. Why don't we already have a run book, and this is how you have this and this and this, and we need that inventory. So that AV Tech hygiene isn't necessarily going to cost us money. The other two categories are, the one is just going to cost us time. So if I had to say three that I would put out there that are going to impact the most people within and without, those would be my three.
All right, could I have a little bit, I'm watching the tide roll, okay? In that the opportunity that is perhaps unanticipated from the church council's perspective, that they would assume we would come forth with sanctuary things as top priority, is coming in from the experience of the underutilized Fellowship Hall, is where would be our, if we're typing things up by section, Fellowship Hall could be the first place. Now, I can talk out of the other side of my mouth and then say, but the worship experience is at core to our mission, virtual and in person. So if Steve's crafting this report, are we going worship, sanctuary, or fellowship as our top one?
Can't we do them both together? Does it have to be just one?
No, they're both gonna be there.
Oh,
But
okay.
you know, when you
Yeah.
type stuff up, you know.
But I think key to, making Fellowship Hall the headline is going to be describing what can happen if we make that investment. Some of the others are easier to follow. If you've ever watched the worship service remotely, you understand it's not a world-class production. And so you can describe some of these things as improving the live stream capability. But with Fellowship Hall, I'm not sure if people will think right away of, well, is that where you want to run Saturday night service, or what do you want to do with it? So we got to be able to, help people form that picture.
I also,
Could I, Lad, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I'm going to focus on training because that's kind of what I did. And I think in order to get people's buy-in, they have to understand what you're putting in place. And I think if the fellowship hears about us focusing on training and helping people understand the different devices that they have and how they pertain to the service and the message that we're trying to convey. I think people get really nice buy-in. I mean, training to me is, of the three, sanctuary, fellowship that would be at my top three, and training should be up there, should be at least, it's important, needless to say. So
It would seem to me with whatever section we do on 1, 2, and 3,
Yeah.
it should start with a bit of narrative describing the possibility. All right, so I think that this is the acknowledging the reality with a combo of what's possible in terms of a narrative, which we would recommend could be handled these ways. So I think it paints Ernie's picture of people can understand bad live streaming, Facebook, whatever it is. But I think we could, with each one of them, imagine going to an event in Fellowship Hall that allows you to listen to this, see this, whatever. So I think Steve could craft a little narrative of bringing the words to life of what's happening in each of those areas. And then in our recommendation for consideration would be these things.
Okay. We could list all the things that have already in Fellowship Hall that, we do so much in there.
Yeah.
We do so much more.
So again, I'm thinking again succinct, there's, how do we get it so that my mind opened up to the idea, and then, so what'll it take to do it? I think on the hygiene department, I'm still struggling with the word hygiene, but I'll flow with you. Okay, I'm flowing with you there. I don't, but it's a that I do not yet know. I do think that this whole idea about if we're being person-centric, anybody wants to know, how can I learn how to use this thing better? So I think we're coming at this, remember, who's our customer, who's our client, and understanding what the client customer might need in terms of training has to undergird the journey ahead of what we do. So I'm babbling. So Fred has a point, and then Steve.
Ernie, the way you laid this out was extremely helpful. I really appreciate it, because I had the same experience. When I put them together, I ranked one of the identifying areas, fellowship, certainly, and the impact number ranked up high. And LAD, training also ranked high, especially in my personal experience and knowledge of tech. But there I applied cost benefit, and am I right if I consider the cost is really a lot of time and effort by volunteers, and the benefit is immensely in the results and help to the part of the congregation that I know.
So Fred, the way I was trying to use those categories is that cost would be real dollars out the door.
Yeah.
And so buying things, hiring vendors, and effort would be staff or volunteer that doesn't cost money, but takes a lot of energy to accomplish.
Steve has a point, and then watching for hands. Steve.
My prediction is that once we get the results of the survey, the AV tech training is going to go straight up in terms of a priority. Because if some of you recall, the real embryo for the creation of this whole task force was the reality that we've invested all this money in technology infrastructure, and we've never talked about what the customer, the person in the pew, the person in the church needs in order to be able to benefit from the technology we've invested. And so I think that the training thing, we can just assume, and I know the risks of assumptions, but I think we can assume that as we get towards the crafting of a report, that whole area of tech training is going to become very important. And I want to say something now that is is delicate because it comes off as negative. And that's not my intent, and it's certainly not aiming at any one person. But the problems we have faced with the live streaming and the technology in the sanctuary, the sound system, et cetera, seem to be never ending.
Mhm.
And I don't know how we solve that. I don't know if we need literally to invest more money in our tech leadership or what we need to do, but at some point, we've got to be able to show the congregation that all the money that has been spent on technology has produced some positive results, because we've said, we had the meeting 2 weeks ago, the meeting to deal with the organ. And I jokingly told people I was gonna get up and amend it to say, while we're spending money, can we
Oh, I know.
put in a new sound system in the sanctuary? Because it was a disaster that Sunday. And we just, I don't know how we even put this in here, and maybe we don't. Maybe the fact that we share this, Ernie, with you and we share it.
No, our job is to be forthright,
Okay.
and a lot of money's been spent,
Mhm.
and we need to figure out, we keep having hiccups, and how do we prevent future hiccups?
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of, I think, part of our charter.
Very good, agreed.
And I think part of preventing future hiccups might be taking this finding to the council and
Mhm.
saying, we may need to invest in personnel also. Whether it's, we need, besides a full-time AV person, maybe we need a full-time, part-time. I think when we say, well, we're gonna have volunteers do things and help with things, you put a lot of emphasis on volunteers that, that's not as certain as if we have a position that says this AV person is going to be responsible for training people, or if we're trying to live stream and we've got a problem with the sound system, that we really can look at them and, from the business world, hold them accountable for why the sound system doesn't work, and that might mean an investment in salaries. So that really is a council decision, but that, we can say that you may need to
This
invest
is
in
where I bet,
AV salaries.
we can be a benefit to the council, because
Mhm.
we've studied this, and careful what you do unless you have the appropriate support to fulfill it.
And again, along those very same lines, and with all due respect, again, to all personnel involved, I myself do not know how much training our own one tech person has had. Maybe we need to invest in getting our person a little bit more training. Maybe our person needs to take more classes, a class or two. Maybe we
Do
have.
we know we no longer have this tech person?
No,
Okay,
Yeah, we do.
we no longer
Oh,
have this
sorry.
tech person.
did not know that.
Yes, so I would like us to
All right, so
live
we need
in
to
the
now.
reality. All right, live in the reality that there will be a hearing,
Okay.
and what is being hired. Let's take advantage of all the lessons we have learned. So that we can hire, but then we can also say, it's nice to have one person, but to really optimize our congregation's ability to participate, it may take.
And does everyone on this task force know that?
No,
Well,
No.
now
Kind
Now
of, you
they-
kind of flipped out there. Is Anthony still around? What's going on?
So
Sure.
on Monday,
your announcement of for our awareness.
Well, I think Ernie.
Okay, well, we're not in charge of this. Ernie's the president.
Ernie, could you please address that?
yeah, so on Monday, Anthony's attendance problems and performance problems were brought to a conclusion, and we parted ways earlier this week. And so right now is the perfect time to be us thinking about what input do we want to provide in terms of, what are the key things we need that kind of a role to accomplish, or roles, because, we've got to be able to, maybe it's two part-timers, maybe it's a full-time and a part-time, maybe it's one full-timer, but you know, Michael needs input from this group on how do we envision, you know, AV technology being used by the church as we go forward, and what kind of work will that result in, so that we can, you know, then provide some guidance on what number of roles and what responsibilities for each of the roles, so that we can, you know, get out searching, because it may take a bit to properly get the roles filled.
May I suggest that our pocketbook doesn't rule who we get? If there's, you know, we might be looking for somebody that doesn't fit our pocketbook. And we might have to increase our pocketbook a little bit.
We also have I look at everything as not a problem, as an opportunity. I think when we have no one in there right now, it gives the church the opportunity to contract with temporary services who will come in and demonstrate excellence, and we'll get a better idea of what it'll take to continue that excellence through our contracting with professionals at this point. Just again, it's interim. I'm not saying you do that for the long term, but it's a great learning opportunity for the congregation to take advantage of this whole. It's not the let's quick get someone behind the keyboard to do it. So we should not be looking for the patch. We should be looking for the bridge. We're looking and we're learning during the bridge time.
As my grandmother would say, the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Well, and it may turn out that, you know, some of those contract hours ought to be spent in doing things like organizing and labeling and documenting the whole soundboard process, because they won't be able to go in and provide a superior experience if they don't first figure it all out and get it all organized.
Yes. So Ernie, I believe, unless I'm watching body language, if it helps you at all, as church council president, the AV task force does recommend that in this opportunity we have been given, we don't approach the opportunity as a patch, but rather as a bridge for excellence.
There's gotta be a source
There's
for a temporary service, and that
there's right.
industry today. Oh, excellent approach. Often those sources end up being employees.
They could, but
But
I'm into
that's not where you want.
let the process reveal.
With the Sunday service as a priority.
Well, now wait a second, we just.
Okay, you're not. Well, just because of all the things that have been happening, I guess that's why.
All right, I'm going to keep us talking and moving with the thought that we are going to end in the next 10 minutes. All right, for today. So Ernie, you volunteered, I saw that you're going to take our chart and do some revisions, restructure points. I would like to suggest that while Ernie's working on the guts in there, that who would like to work on the narrative that would be, because I think we do want to look at the narrative about, oh, we want to do something in Fellowship Hall. Oh, we want to make sure we're educating. Oh, we want to make sure that. So this is painting the story that people can see, is that they then look at Ernie's list below. So who would like to work on narrative for each section?
We're going out of town for 10 days, so.
Okay.
Sorry.
I know she's looking at me.
You are. You just happen to be in my son. Sorry.
Mike, very good.
My only hesitation is I have a deadline of producing the history in the script for the history of my family's 100 years in the automotive sector in order to get this into a video and get it into a book and get it published in time for their celebration. So I've got that one up front. I'm willing to try to help, but if I fail, there's my excuse.
All right, but do you want to go solo, or would you like someone to bounce ideas off?
You know what,
Getting it.
I think what would be most helpful here is if we invite everyone to create what they believe is the vision of doing things in some of these areas. Because if I by myself
That's a
think
great
about,
idea.
here's what happens. Chris, Jane, Mike are gonna have different views of what they think it would do. And if we could collect those. And bring up much
I
better-
am going to create the Google form.
Yay.
Okay, that everyone is going to write there. You are only, each person, you are only allowed to write one paragraph
Okay.
of how, if you had to stand up in front of the congregation, how you would describe what you think the possibility, the situation is. Come at it from your own angle. But if we have the topic of training, we have the topic of fellowship hall, we have the topic of worship experience. And then we have the topic of hygiene, which I'm not sure how much narrative we need on hygiene, but I'm going to,
Housekeeping.
I'm gonna have
Yeah.
those 4 areas.
That's what I.
But does anybody want a 5th area in there? Do we want to have a 5th area of, let's get serious, ongoing, AV technology takes more? So I can put that in there too, okay? So is everybody happy that you will fill out your Google form with, it's your narrative of what you would like to do, and then Steve is going to be our editor compiler.
Of what we think.
So example,
What
you have been quite articulate about what could happen with your frustration with live streaming not working that well. So you're going to talk about the worship experience and consider the possibilities of the worship experience for those in person and those coming remotely. The quality needs to be the same for both.
Okay,
All right,
thank
so.
you for clarifying.
All right, so you're gonna just give us a little narrative about, what do you mean it should be the same for both? Okay,
Okay,
so that would be my suggestion on how you're gonna approach each of these sections. Are you comfortable with that, Mr. Gunderson?
That's a great idea.
Oh, like you came up with it. So- We're gonna block you. Okay, I'm gonna give you a deadline though. We have to write all our narratives so that when we get together again, thank you very much. On August 16th, we're getting, get together. Oh,
no.
okay.
Oh, that's not the right date.
It's not.
Gone.
It's Wednesday, next meeting, I don't get. 16th of what?
Oh, no, 21st, 26th maybe.
Yes.
That is the 16th.
Yeah.
I think they're-
The next meeting we have is on Wednesday, August 30th. All right, so your jobs, I'm going to give you a deadline on this Google. And everybody's got to get their Google done, if that's a Wednesday, by Friday, August 27th. Is that a day? Whatever that Friday before is.
25th.
The
25th.
25th, okay? Your assignment is to complete your 5-section narrative by August 25th, and that gives Steve enough time to do a bit of compiling. Does that work for you, sir?
Yeah, what time on the 25th?
5th, before your head hits the
30th,
pillow.
30th.
Okay, so on the 30th is, let me go back and it's on the 30th. Oh, I'm going to feed you again.
Okay.
The Deborah Nataji budget. The task force, okay?
Can we contribute? We should-
You can, this is my gift for you, okay? So
11, 11:30, 12.
it's 12 to 1. But if anybody is eager for 11:30, because we seem to go long, I'm fine with changing the start time to 11:30. Does anybody, could I have the hands up if you want 11:30? Hands up, 11.
I think we can just-
Okay, we're gonna go 11.
You might be able to go by Zoom.
You can
You never
zoom,
know.
okay? August 30. And you have to have your narrative input before your head hits the pillow on August 25th. That gives Steve several days to compile.
In the category,
I'm gonna put it in the email. But it's, the categories are fellowship, worship, training, these are not in order, okay, hygiene, and get real, do you wanna support tech? Okay,
What is Get Real? Do you want to support tech again?
I'm sorry.
What is Get Real? Do you want to support tech again?
Okay, so we can have all the ideas in the world, but if there's not a human who is going to operate all of the technology properly,
Oh,
this is the
thank you.
Anthony 2.
Okay,
Okay, so what, when you think about the kind of personnel, talents that you want available to do all this
what are
stuff,
the requirements?
what's it gonna take? We need someone who loves to troubleshoot. We need someone who understands how to shoot videos or operate machines, whatever. I don't know what it is we want Mr. and Mrs. Tech to do,
Okay,
but you're gonna outline it so that wouldn't it be kind of fun if the AV task force had totally different opinions of how to support? Okay, that'd be interesting too. Okay. All right, are we okay with this? Marge, you're gonna continue to let the whole congregation know that we're a smooth running operation. And we know exactly what we're doing and we just want their input along the way, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Okay, before we close, I just want to check, is there anything hanging out in your brains? Mike, anything else you wish we talked about?
Nope, I think you're fine.
All right, Mike is going to be periodically monitoring the what's cool input. Okay, periodically look in case somebody likes ideas.
Yes,
Ideas.
yes.
Okay, Steve, anything else for the team? Team, okay, Fred, anything else? All right, you're not traveling yet, so we'll see you on Sunday. Okay, Jane, you're good. Chris, you're good. Okay, Lad, how's it up there in Maine? Give us a temperature, please. We'd like to know your thermometer.
It's a balmy 70 degrees.
Ooh.
It's beautiful. I was on the lake yesterday, swimming around. There is utopia outside of Florida.
Go to Marge. Any other comments, Marge?
I'm just gonna, in defense of Wisconsin, it's also another beautiful spot and it's 78 degrees and no humidity. It's perfect.
Oh, the Wisconsinites are over here. All right.
Just wait the
No,
football.
I'm really appreciative of sort of focusing this. I was a little overwhelmed with that, trying to rank those different categories. I think this seems like a better approach because I think we're missing some pieces and we're catching them by doing this.
Okay, all right, that's good. Well, in the time we're gonna plan to go, oh, yeah, we forgot about this, we should add this in too. So that's all about we're about the process. But how do we pull it all in? Sandy, any other comments, suggestions here?
Nope, all good with me.
Okay, and you're off with Maggie, yes, it's going out this week. So it's gonna be in your midweek connection.
same.
No, the next,
Next-
yes. We're aiming for the 19th in my head. When's the 19th? It's not tomorrow, right? No, can't be tomorrow. Yes, so Marge, our plan is to have it so that when Fred and Jane are at the table, people don't wonder what they're doing. So we're gonna have it in
Out there.
yeah.
The article should be in connections today with the link. So actually, if it's live today, they could actually start filling it out now.
Okay, so we got it
Right.
done. We've got a plan.
Good
Okay.
job on it, Sam.
All right, Mark is on it. Ernie, are you okay?
I just got concerned about the survey since the online fillable survey isn't finished yet, but we're publishing the link.
Ernie, I tested it well. We were on here with I've been talking with Maggie most of the time. The online version. She's in good shape. Can't find the buttons for questions 4, 5, and 6, but she and Nina can. As soon as she and I reconcile that problem, we're done.
Great. Okay. Then all is well here in Idaho.
Everybody, this is an incredible collection of human beings because you do work outside of committee also. So Sandy's on it and Marge is ready to, press her button. Okay? All right. Anything else at this time? Thank you very much. I'll see you on the 30th in person or virtually, whatever works best for everybody. I'm now going to turn off the recording.
Thank you. for
Thanks,
that.
everyone.
Thank you.
So much. It seems like the tech person is always a repeat of the one before.
Well, I think
And first,
you hit the issue. We gotta be willing to spend the money to get the skills we need.
Yeah, I think that's the